This is a demo that uses Google's Data Studio and Google's BigQuery to put together 3 single views in a dashboard: a single view of the fan, a single view of a sponsor, and a single view of an individual match. So it's a fictitious dummy data set of 200 fans, which I've labelled Crowhurst Football Club, which is the village I grew up in. And but none of the data has any relation to Crowhurst at all. Purely fictional and anonymised users, names and email addresses. So what we have here is a scorecard of the total number of fans, total ticket spend, total e-commerce spend, the average channels subscribed to by fans, and then the percentage of fans who have subscribed to 3 or more channels. And then we have a time series on tickets, subscribers by channel count, a breakdown of Mixlr subscriptions, which is an audio product that's quite popular for audio commentaries with a lot of non-league football clubs. The amount of revenue attributed to the ground on a match day, and then how much of that we can assign to kind of play to fans that we know about because we have their email addresses, and then what that attribution rate looks like. And then a table with the single view of the fan showing their name, their email, their postcode, whether they're subscribed to our YouTube channel, to the Mixlr channel, and if they're subscribed to the Mixlr channel, what plan they're on, the amount of matches that they have attended, and then the amount of money that they have spent on tickets. Needed to correct these figures here. View hasn't kind of refreshed yet. These figures shouldn't be anywhere near as high as this. In fact, if I just refresh the date and go to let's just go to the last quarter and apply that, yeah, you'll see that those update to much more realistic figures. Then on the single sponsor page, we've got a breakdown of our sponsors, the placements that they have brought, the players that they've sponsored, what that contract value looks like, how many placements they brought, and then in terms of hospitality, the number of packages and bookings that they have made, what their hospitality spend looks like. If we actually have a record of the contact associated to that business as being a fan, we can add their fan revenues to it and then have a figure for the total relationship. And then an individual match day report where we can see what our average attendance looks like, our average ground revenue, the attributed revenue, the ticket revenue, the percentage of season ticket holders who have had their tickets scanned, and the amount of season tickets sold. So that fictitious sample size of 226 of those have season tickets. And if we filter by match, you'll see that these charts will update for that specific match. So let's just go and have a look at this match here, and then you'll see that these have updated, and then we can see what the single view looks like here in terms of attendance, season tickets. With that 26 season tickets, that's 80% of our season tickets were scanned for that game. The ground revenue and the attributed revenue again. So data sources for the tickets. This is modelled on Ticketco's API. Data source for the e-commerce. So for everything that we can see here under the Shopify, comes from obviously the Shopify API, and the sponsor information comes from 2 sources. One, an API call to my Trackit product where it's pulling in information on businesses who have sponsored individual players, so that their sponsorships go through to the social media posts. That's the use case there. And then on my sponsor logo recognition product. So you can see here we've got the Aquawad advertising here on the Eastern Stand roof. This shows all the places where that appears along the timeline, where the advertiser name and the placement position are pulled from a database that is associated to a CRM of advertisers, which can be managed by customers on a page that looks like this. So while the dashboard gives a good overview of the key KPIs for a single view of the fan, single view of the sponsor, and the match report, where things get really interesting is where we can start to actually question that data using a AI chat window. So here's a conversation that I've just had with that AI to get the answers to kind of like a few questions. So I started off by asking who is our highest spending fan, who doesn't buy sponsorship, i.e. just a regular fan, and it goes through and brings me out the name of that person. What has that fan bought from the shop? Turns out that fan hasn't bought anything from the shop. So I've asked then, okay, well, let's have a chart me a breakdown of her spend then. So she spent this amount of money on tickets, this amount of money on match day spend. I've said, yeah, but I want a better breakdown. Season tickets, multiple tickets per match. On match day, are they buying food, drink or merch? So it then goes through that and then basically tells me about the ticketing that they buy, and then gives me a breakdown of the match day merch that they buy as well. Puts that in a chart for me, and I can download that chart as a PNG if I want to include that in any reports. So on the basis that this fan hasn't bought anything from the store, I've asked who's purchased the most from our online store, and then it's found the name of that person. So I said, okay, render me a table showing what they bought and when. So it gives me a list of all of the items that they bought from the store. And I see here that they bought a player name and number. So I'm then going to ask, okay, well, who did they get a player name and number of? And it goes through and tells me that it's Liam Whitfield, our number 2. So I've now said that I know that in the knowledge base, so in the knowledge base, I've uploaded some information on our commercial and sponsorship opportunities now, because the example I'm using here is fictitious data from my old village club who don't sell commercial and sponsorship opportunities. I've uploaded 2 bits of information from Dorking Wanderers FC, a PDF of their commercial opportunities, and also a web page that has their player sponsorship details on them. So here, for example, is the player sponsorship page, which talks about the various benefits that you'll get if you sponsor a player. So we go back to that chat. So I've said, okay, I know in the knowledge base we have some info on our commercial and sponsorship opportunities. We should see if we can get this fan to buy a player sponsorship for next season. Write me an email that I can send them. So it drafts that email, and what it weaves into that email is some benefits that you'll get, where it's pulling its knowledge of those benefits from that page that I've ingested into the knowledge source. So I'm then interested in what games has that fan been to. And then it turns out that actually, with this dummy data, things don't necessarily join up as you would expect them to. So it's given me a high spending fan who spends a lot of money on tickets but has never bought anything from the shop. And conversely, it's given me another fan who buys a lot from the shop but has never been to a game. So, maybe someone like an overseas fan or someone like that. And so I've then gone back and asked it, okay, what games has the top spender we were looking at earlier gone to? So I've asked a number of questions here about this person, but I'm now asking it to remember the conversation that we were having earlier about this person. So, what games has the top spender we were looking at earlier gone to? Okay, I'll find out which games this person has attended, and then it queries their database, and then I've asked them to say for both the games where they bought free tickets, can they let me know what sort of tickets they bought. It tells me that they purchased free adult tickets. And then I've said, do either of the two fans we've been looking at engage with our audio or video offerings? So that's then looking at our data tables for Mixlr and for YouTube. So it turns out that this user is an active Mixlr subscriber and has the support a monthly plan and has had 17 listens, but they don't subscribe to YouTube, and that this user doesn't subscribe to either. So it's like, okay, let's get this person to subscribe to YouTube. What's the email that we send them? And so it then drafts that email that I can send out to them. And I said, great, now can you give me a list of other fans who listen but don't watch? And it's found 36 fans who fit that criteria, and it has given me details of the top 5 in terms of listens. So I'm then going to ask, what players do we have who are sponsored, whose sponsorship is coming to an end, and is there any crossover between those players and the players who fans have purchased names and numbers for from the store? So it then goes through and finds that these are the players that are currently sponsored, and that the crossover between these players and players for whom names and numbers have been purchased from the stores are these people. So it's like, okay, well, let's see if we can get those fans to sponsor those players next season. So give me a table of those fans who bought these numbers and their email addresses so that I can send them the email, and that's what I get sent back to me here. What businesses have bought Matchday Hospitality who haven't as yet bought either a player sponsorship or perimeter advertising? So it's unable to kind of find that crossover. So I said, okay, then give me a list of my top 5 customers for hospitality and then all other sponsorship. And it breaks that down into my top 5 hospitality customers and then my all other sponsorships with the contract value, what the placement spend looks like, and the players that they have sponsored. So I said, do me a pie chart showing the split of all of our commercial income. So builds that pie chart, and then I've said add tickets, match day and shop to this so we can get a full club picture, and then it adds all of that data to that, so I then get a full picture of what it looks like for the entirety of the club. And then I've asked it what top 3 games saw the highest percentage of season tickets scanned and what 3 games have been the lowest. So with that, it kind of hit a bit of a problem and then tells me that it can't fulfill the request. So what I've then done is I've gone back to my data to try and explore that as an issue, and have then taken the answer that I got from Gemini and have pumped that back into the model as an example of how I can use this where I don't get answers to the questions that I want, to be able to refine this so that I'm able to kind of get answers to those questions in the future. So if you're interested in seeing how this might work for your club, let me know and we can have a chat.